Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by once again. A number of things I want to cover, right up to that expensive cup of coffee I mentioned below at the end, and it's expensive, let me tell you. Whatever. Let's move right into it. I've got my list here. Now, the Ocean Builder, Sea Pods, everything else that you have been looking at over the last couple of videos here, a couple thousand of you each video is good numbers, considering I don't promote the site at all. This seemed to have caught on and caught people's eyes, and so that was useful. And LinkedIn, my newsletter there, got hundreds of reads, and there were quite a few very positive comments. But the thing that amused me was that everything was done in English, of course, because it's in the LinkedIn English section, I guess you'd call it, or whatever. And of course includes much in Spanish as well, to put it gently. But the key here is that everything that goes out on this had been in English, and I certainly wasn't going to try to translate everything into Spanish or have that done. It's pretty expensive. So I can understand the massive amount of material they had, that trying to get it all translated into Spanish was going to be very, well, ridiculously expensive at this stage. So I just put out a little announcement to the effect that it was going to show, and just a few words of Spanish. That's all. It was just to be there the evening before the morning they were going to have the launch on YouTube. And got 7,000 impressions. I thought, well, okay, I learned something about that tonight. So I gave it as much support as I could so that people could get to see it. They've had two question and answer sessions. Both were well attended by people on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and et cetera and so forth. I'm going to put links to those below for those of you who are interested, because they answer a lot of the questions that people had here and that I'm sure others have had regarding the practicality of this whole affair and how it's done and so forth. So I'll put links to those below, and if you're interested, you can follow up on that. So that's pretty much where that stands. I push on this not so much because I'm not trying to sell anything for anybody, because I'm not going to get paid for it, I can tell you that much. But the critical thing here is that for years now I've tried to be a positively disrupting force in the real estate industry or sector here, particularly for housing that would be of interest to people like yourselves, that is, people from other nations. It has been an uphill struggle. The real estate sector here is not yet got its act together. It's working on it. It's gone from the middle to the late 20th century. We've got much more to do, but the lack of initiative and innovation, what have you, much of the problem lies in not having any connection with the markets that they're trying to market to. Now, some of them have had their degrees from Europe or North America. Well, that's all fine, but that was 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. It doesn't really mean anything anymore, I'm sorry to say. And you've got to really be connected. And I follow them very, very, very carefully, and have for all my life, not just because I'm a citizen, but at least as far as North America is concerned. But because this has been my job. And in some respects, it's great not to be there, because then you don't get as emotionally involved in what's turned into a very emotional thing all over the world, everywhere you go. So as a result, that for me, that's pretty good. But for them, it's not so good, because they're not getting a grip on what's happening. And, well, what can I say? I have you, and all the many email messages I get, and all the messages here. But I get tons of email, let's put it that way, which is fine. I'm delighted to. I have been doing that for 18 years. Of course I get tons of email. And that without promotion. So God forbid if I actually promoted it, how much I'd get in. But the point is I get steady, regular communication with people in the U.S. and Canada, of course, always. But now more and more Europeans and Asians and even other Latin Americans who sit and listen to me in English all this time. And so I have people from all over South America and so forth. So I get a lot of feedback from a lot of people in a lot of places. And I see that what the market's doing up here is not responsive. Panama is up with or ahead in some areas of where things are in terms of modernity. doing the modern thing. But in many areas, but real estate, no, it has to be sort of drag kicking and screaming. The recent problems associated with the pandemic has at least pushed some of them to cooperate a bit more frequently than has been true in the past. They have a long way to go. So I am focused on that. And so when something comes along, and it's here locally, and we can see it and understand it, and it's going to be an experiment operating right here, and it's new and different and exciting and potentially very attractive to some of the people who want to come down and live here, who've got the money for that sort of housing, then by all means, hallelujah. This sort of activity is the kind that leads other people to think of other things. It can gain some strength in itself. Its originality is very infrequently original. Actually, it's usually sparked by something else that people see or feel or sense or pick up from somebody else's conversation. And then they take it and run with it. That's really what I'm hoping things like this will do here in Panama, because we're ready for it. It's just that, I can't get through, so I'm having to work on my own. Basically, it boils down to here is I'm well aware of the fact that today you have to bring the money. If you can bring the money, you can get the job done. If you don't bring the money, no, forget it. So it makes it all the more tougher. But here we have this, and it's a positive note, and it's a step in the right direction. 3 cheers to that. So on to other things. I follow up on a couple other things that we discussed in the past. And regarding the International Monetary Fund, $2.5 billion so-called loan, that's really a line of credit. I'd said that they were going to have another review completed of it, and they did, and we haven't used a penny of it. If you don't use it, you don't pay. It isn't debt. It's just a line of credit out there if we should need it. It will run out in just a few months, and that'll be it. It'll be over. So I think, understand, to have it there is a wonderful thing to have in case of need. To not use it is a clear indication to others that we stand on our own 2 feet, and that we can go to the private market and we can raise money there. And I know if I was in the government and we're nearing the end of it and I had something of significance, I might use a little of it if the interest rate was that low. But really, the truth is, it's the attitude the government takes, the way in which they deal with things, that has a huge impact on credit ratings and their willingness to work with countries. It's why we've been so very highly praised by the IMF. Anyhow, that's the latest. And then planning no more reviews because we're not spending it. So it's fine. And everything else they've seen here is very positive. So much for that. Now, also the IMF is the one who puts out the growth rate estimates that people follow. And they are, and some sources say 7%, but more recently I see 7.5% for 2022. Well, folks, last time people were getting excited about it being maybe 10, possibly even 12%. This was near the end of the year, and I kept sitting there saying, that doesn't make any sense. And I ran the numbers and added in the numbers for the final quarter that I thought made sense on a month-to-month basis, just following past years and so on. And I said I couldn't see how they could get less than 14, and it would probably be closer to 16. Well, it was 15.6. So everyone else was talking 10, 12, whatever. We often underestimate this, and Panamanians are particularly good at underestimating their future growth rates, and that's not a bad idea. Better to be more conservative than more hopeful and then be disappointed. But in any event, if we're going to have 7.5%, I follow the IMAE, the monthly index economic activity. I've told you that it's a little bit like the GDP, but it's not exactly the same. And it's done on a monthly basis, and it bounces around a lot, blah, blah, blah. And so we use a blue line, an average of it over time to get an idea, and it's closely associated with the GDP. All right, fine, all that. How closely associated is it? Here's the IMF figure of how our IMAE reports have fared, or how they've compared to the actual final GDP figures. You can see That's a pretty good job they're doing up there. You know, they got a little bit higher at the high and a little bit lower at the low, but that's nothing. This is very little change. And so it's very close. Given that we're currently over 13% for the first 6 months of the year, I think the only way we get down to 7.5% will probably be to slow down to 1 or 2% for the last 6 months. Which I might add, July and August, 2 of them are gone already, and September's well underway. So the simple fact is that I don't see it. I don't see 7 or 7.5. Maybe we'll see something coming down the road. We will be comparing ourselves to periods last year when the recovery was underway, so the increase isn't going to be significant. But I don't think it's going to be down to 1 or 2%. Anyhow, we'll see. That's part of the fun of it all, I guess. We'll see what happens. I'm just as happy, like I say, I'm happy to underestimate. It's always better to underestimate. Now, oh, yes, for people coming down, we went through the Friendly Nations visa fiasco. I mean, they never got that quite worked out, and now they've got workarounds, and they're trying this and that, or whatever. The other, what they had changed to, or what they really changed, was the other form called a qualified investor, permanent resident qualified investor program now. And that requires a purchase of a home for $300,000. If it's $200,000, you get a temporary visa, residency visa, but $300,000, you get the permanent residency visa that you used to be able to get with the plain old Friendly Nations visa. Now, that's, and I've been told, I said, we're going to bounce that up to $500,000, so grab it now. Guys, you get up to $500,000 range, you're talking about countries that actually provide passports and citizenship to people with that much money. We don't do that. No matter all the propaganda about it's the first step on the road and you can apply for citizenship and you can stand on your head and sing the national anthem. You can do a lot of stuff, but your odds of getting citizenship here are extremely small. And there's good reason for it. And two, we have so many. We're a small country. Tons of foreigners live here. If they all became citizens, Panamanians would lose control of their own country. And we're not talking about North Americans and Europeans. We're talking about our cousins in Colombia and Venezuela and other areas. So they can't just make it that easy, and it's not. So I know fewer people now come down for that reason, but now they're beginning to sink in, and people are beginning to realize that this is the fact here. So what do? Then they raise it up as if it was a golden visa, as they like to put it. $500,000 would be completely ridiculous, and I don't think $300,000 has been all that terribly successful. I don't know. I keep track of the statistics. We've got tons of statistics. You'd think it was all a mystery. It's not a mystery. And I'll talk about them as we get more of them come out, but I'm not terribly impressed by the $300,000 program, but I'm delighted that they announced that they're not going to raise it, so it's going to remain $300,000. Well, okay. They say to continue strengthening the construction sector. We need a lot of strengthening in the construction sector. I'm not so sure that's going to do much good, but it certainly is not going to do any harm, which I think a pop-up to $500,000 would have done. Then for the other less significant things, well, maybe they're not so insignificant. It can be very significant for some people. Marijuana is now, for medical purposes, legal. The law is passed. It's law. And the regulations are being set and everything else. It's going to be a while before the cultivation begins. They've got all sorts of requirements. It's going to be regulated. But it's headed that way. And I know people here who have very much needed it for some of their, for some people who are ill and could use it. So I'm glad that has happened for them. I'm sure it will upset some people at the idea, but folks, this is the way it is. I don't know, recreational marijuana, that's someday in the future, maybe, I don't know. But right now, we've got the legal marijuana, medical marijuana, and that is a good step as far as I'm concerned. Now, for the coffee, we really do have good coffee here. I'll put a link into the article. You can read it if you like it. I have it in a version that should come up as English, a translation from a local newspaper article. You can just see what it has to say. But the particular coffee in question, which was just auctioned off, just for a few pounds of it were created, but they were $6,034 a pound. A pound, not a kilo, a pound, $6,034. Yeah, so I think a cup of that coffee is never going to be purchased by Bob. And that's wholesale, remember, that is wholesale. This is a group out of Taiwan, if I remember correctly, and it's like a connoisseurs group and so on. People with the money to drink it are welcome too. I'll never taste it. That's okay. I think we'll get along fine. I get great coffee here for like $5 a pound and very pleased with it. And it's certainly a bargain compared to what I've had to pay elsewhere in the U.S., for example, for that same level of coffee. So I am happy with that, and I don't have to complain. That pretty much sums it up right for the moment. I'm going to be coming back with you again with more, because what I'm trying to do right at the moment, I try to come up with something new, because we have some troubling aspects of the business right at the moment. There's so many agents and agencies are so needing to make sales, and it disturbs me. And how can we be helpful to people like yourselves? I mean, we've got the Metro Mass program, but I mean, that's not, we don't push it, we don't say anything about it really, but I mean, what is it that beyond that it can be offered at least? And so I'm really getting to a point after 18 years of seeing some of this stuff come back. I don't like it, and we need to at least not just talk about it, but to try to do something to help. And so I'm talking to others here that we might partner with to try to do something. And if that succeeds, I'll be letting you know about it. If not, well, so be it. I'll let you know about that too. So it's good talking to you. Look forward to seeing you one of these days down here in Panama.